live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Good morning. Welcome to the lifeboat. Tommy Scoville. So this is the winter that will not end. I woke up this morning to another huge snowstorm. Huge is an exaggeration. But once again, I went from being able to see grass and looking quite a bit like spring to virtually everything being covered in snow again. Looks like could be Christmas time. Kind of a bummer. But when I left Vermont last century, I was working at a hotel. It was a bellhop and a doorman at a very, very fancy hotel in the town that I lived in, or the town next to the town I lived in. And in the month of December, not one day got above 0. And I remember just cursing the weather for that entire time. And I moved to a warm climate. And I feel like this is going to be a good punctuation mark to the whole cold weather thing. I'm very much looking forward to being out of the cold, so to speak. So, if you saw the thumbnail, today we're going to be talking about family, primarily family and friends. It's one of the most difficult things to navigate in all of sobriety, right? Relationships are probably the most dangerous threat most of us have. It's the most dangerous thing to deal with and most difficult thing to deal with, which should make a lot of sense because they're the most difficult thing to deal with in life. There are coaches, right? Relationship coaches. There are people who write books about them. In fact, every day there's a new book coming out. And I'm not even exaggerating. If you just watch book list every day, there's somebody writing a book about how to better navigate relationships. It keeps coming back to one thing over and over and over again, which is communication. And when you're on dope, especially when you have gotten to the point where you're in the deep depths of addiction, the key to our being able to remain in active addiction is to lie about being in active addiction. And it's not so much that you have to lie to strangers, right? You don't care if a stranger knows that you're a junkie. You got to lie to family and friends. And for some people, it's, small white lies. And for some people, it's considerably larger than that. I've said many times on here that I stole from family and friends. And somebody wrote to me recently and said, did you break into their houses? Did you steal from them? When I stole from them because they gave me money. And it was always under false pretense. And I don't know whether it's unique to heroin addicts because I've watched it happen with heroin addicts many times. Or maybe it's just because I've spent a lot more time with heroin addicts than I have people addicted to other substances. But you'll get somebody to give you money. And as I've said many times on the show, you start setting up a lie a month and a half, 2 months ahead of time. It's not that you won't tell 10 along the way, but you want to set up for one larger. So you start saying, how are you? Well, the car's shaking in the front, making some weird noise. Planning for down the road where I say, I went to the garage and it's $1,100. And someone in my family would say, you know what, I can help you with that. And you go, no, I'll take care of this on my own. There are ways I can get this. You know what I mean? I can hustle this. And it's the sleaziest thing in the world. Honestly, theft through deception and con. You're conning the people that you care about the most into giving you not only cash, but cash based in love. And when you get sober and all of this sinks in, you start being honest. It's devastating to the family. And they go through long periods of time where they start running through their memory banks of every single time you needed a little help, or every single time they offered to help without you asking. And it's difficult for them. But as addicts, we spend almost all of our time, whether we're in active addiction or whether we are in early recovery, being very center focused, not self-centered, but where you're the center of the universe, so to speak. As an addict, you staying high or you staying, loaded is number one priority. And then as soon as you get sober, staying sober is number one priority. In both cases, family and friends tend to take a back seat. The longer you're in recovery, the better a chance you have of actually building some decent relationships. But Mark Wages did a show on this once, and Mark was on a ton of shows and did a ton of work, but he hosted alone probably 5 or 6 of them. And one was just amazing. And he talked about how when he got out of rehab, he just came clean on every single thing in his life, because he figured if ever there was a time to do it, these people already knew he was walking out of a rehab. Why leave anything in the closet? Dump all of it, if it takes 3 days. And I think it's a great idea. It can be very tough on your family, but I remember going through this with my family. And even though it seemed like they wanted to do it in one big dose, they would then remember something else. Hey, that time you went to Australia, what was going on with that? You once had to have me wire money to Canada. What were you doing in Canada? And then you start going through all of these. They begin to think that everything you told them was a lie. And in my case, a lot of it was. There has to be an understanding on the part of the addict that recovery is a process that the people who love you are a part of. They have to recover. People call it codependence. There's a ton of books written on this too. There are support groups for people who are sticking with family members, right, who got loaded, like Alkanon and Narcanon, where the families of these people get together, because you definitely take that ride on the addiction, whether you are the addict or you're the addict's family, unless they bail. And very often they do. Maybe not the second time or the third chance or the fourth chance, but somewhere along the line, they'll say, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I just cannot do this anymore. And at that point, you as a person in recovery are left with that bridge, which you torched. Very often, the guilt of that starts to weigh on you. And whether you're working 12 steps or whether you're working 3 steps, there comes to a point where you really take a good hard look at who you are and what makes you what you were. And very often we want to reach out to those people. We would like to have our family back. If that's the case, you got to realize that they may need a little help too, right? Of course, we weren't in our right minds, but we beat the hell out of our families and friends. We really did. So going forward, your family has probably earned a really decent amount of understanding. If if somebody says, hey, that time, that your sister's house got broken into and the Xbox disappeared, and you would never rob from your sister. You may not want to take offense to that question. You understand? It's one of those questions that has to be asked for these people. Your family, your friends, if they're sticking with you, if they're listening to these answers, means they care enough to try to get through that. So you can't really jump on them. And this is something that you see a lot. Hey, did you have anything to do with the thing at your sister's house? Man, what kind of scumbag do you think I am? I cannot believe you would ask me that. From a bank robber, right? It's difficult, especially with family, because we tend to put on our best face for the world, not for the people that we care about the most. It's the trust, respect triangle, right? You're at one part of the triangle, and then you have trust and respect. And you will trust your family. You know them. You will trust your friends. You know them. But do you respect them the way that you would somebody you've never met? Now, you're not going to trust that person you've never met, but you're going to put on your best face for them. You want them to think positive. You can lose your mind in front of your family. Scream at the football game. Do whatever. The same thing happens in recovery. We would go to a group session and treat drug addicts we've just met with a ton of respect. And then crap all over family and friends because we know them. And familiarity breeds contempt. So going forward, one of the cliches that you hear all the time is you've got to change the people and places and things that were in your past if you want to stay sober. This is a stumbling block for so many addicts. And it's usually the last thing that they realize is an absolute fact. In other words, they might have 7 or 8 good relapses before they finally get sober. And it's always going to be because of a place that they used to go, a person they used to hang out with, right? Or something that they used to do. I think I can go back to the bar. Just going to throw darts. I'm not going to drink. Eventually, the last holdout to the I really do have to change my entire life is that realization that it's not a cliche, that it's a fact, that you need to change your places, your people, and the places you used to hang out and the people that you used to hang out with, the things that you used to do. It's hard. You don't want to turn your back on your friends. And if you remember, for those of you who have been on the boat long enough, I got chastised really badly once. Not really badly, but somebody took offense at me saying, if your friend's still using, you might want to not hang out with them. You really might want to not hang out with them. And there was a person that said, look, if you don't reach out to that person, who's going to? And there's something to that. But if you reach out to somebody that's still using, the odds of you using with them are 500 times greater than the odds of you pulling them into your early sobriety and the both of you making it. It doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't. Your brain is your enemy, and your brain is looking for any reason it can possibly come up with to relapse. It is hunting at all times for something to justify the next time you get loaded. And if you've got somebody hanging out with you that is in day 1 or day 2 of recovery, that's a person whose mind is doing the exact same thing. The two of you get together, it's over. My first marriage, I was married a long time. I really was. I was married a long time. But when my wife got sober, she realized, she wrote a letter to me and said, I just know that with the amount of time that we've been together, if I get weak at any point, I can get you to leave the house and go get dope and bring it back. And you will do it. No matter how hard you're trying, the two of us can't ever be anywhere near each other. And boy, she has kept to that. The only conversations I've had have been nasty. We went from being husband and wife to, man, I hate that guy. He needs to never come anywhere near me or my family again in a heartbeat. And now, 20 years later, she's softened on a lot of things. But to her, I am still instant addiction. And, I had a friend, a business partner, that said the same thing. It has a lot to do with the person I used to be. And I could get really pissed off at my ex-friend, by his choice ex-friend, right? I was the best man at this guy's wedding. He and I were close. I was there through some really messed up times he had in his family. He had 2 months of the worst family luck you have ever seen. I mean, 3 horrific things happened in his family in the course of a couple of months. And I was there for every part of it. I was there in all 3 times when he heard the news. We were together. It was tough. And when I was in active addiction, you should have heard the things I said about him. Ain't gonna talk to me anymore? F that dude. Seriously, I made him rich. What I really should have said was, he was smart enough to hold on to some of the money that we made. I blew all mine. His wife was not an addict. He'd hand her the money. My wife was an addict. The 2 of us could burn it as fast as I could make it. Very often faster than I could make it. But as you start to get a little bit more sobriety and you start really going back through and having that inventory of who you are and what you were, I realized why these people walked away. And it makes perfect sense. It really does. The hardest friend for me to get rid of, the one that I had been with the longest and truthfully loved the most, but I knew I could not spend another day with, was heroin. And make no mistake, we used to have the word brain shutting down. We give human characteristics to our drugs. Honestly, we have a relationship with them very much like you would anybody else. For real, sometimes you love them, sometimes you hate them. That can happen back to back in a matter of seconds. You're sitting there waiting for the guy to bring drugs and you're in active withdrawal and you're so angry at yourself. And that anger turns towards the drug. Why did I ever do this crap? Man, I hate this stuff. I hate the day this stuff came into my life. And then you see the car pull into the parking lot. And instantly, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. She's here. Shiva. She's here. That was the relationship that was the hardest for me to break. And I did it with a letter. I've read the letter on the air before. But I wrote a goodbye letter to my drug of choice. And every rehab on the planet suggests that you do this. And so few addicts take it seriously. If you're in early addiction, please let me recommend that you do this. It is putting an exclamation point on the end of that chapter of your life. And it is the first page of the next chapter of your life. And it is the start of realizing what the hell this drug did to you. Because when I started writing, it was like journaling almost. I didn't have to edit this thing ever. I just let my hand cook. I wrote that goodbye letter in a prison cell. And I talked about the things that this stuff had taken from me, because it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you courage. It takes away fear, right? It doesn't give you anything. It takes away pain. It takes away fear. And then it takes away friends. And it takes away money. And finally, it takes away God. And then it takes away freedom. And I was sitting in a cell realizing that my best friend had taken millions of dollars from me, destroyed my health, destroyed 2 families, and was off to the next guy to do the same thing. while I sat in there, sick as hell, pissed off at myself, and really angry at her at once. So I wrote that letter. I'd been told to do it 100 times. But this time, I was ready to say goodbye to that garbage. I really was. And from time to time, I whip it out and I read it. It's somewhere in the archives of the lifeboat is me reading that letter. And also, there's me reading a lot of other people's letters. If you haven't done this, do it. I know I sit in front of this thing and I make recommendations. The percentage of people who are going to do what I actually recommend, no way to even guess. But I would imagine it's small. It's a great, great use of your time. It is an absolutely wonderful use of your time. If you kick that crap out of your life and you write what that thing has taken from you, and every letter I've ever seen, read, written, that last couple of lines, every single person says, but you know what? I'm done with you. I mean, without anybody really spelling out an assignment, there's just 3 or 4 sentences of anger at the end of that. Guess what? I'm done with you. Thought you had me beat? I'm never, ever going to get beat by you again. The last couple of sentences are beautiful. They really are. And now you can go out and find new friends. And in many cases, you can go out and find new family. Friends become family very, very often. We talk about having 5 people that you can call. Pick them wisely. For real. Pick them wisely. In addiction, whether it's active addiction or whether it's recovery, once somebody really starts that transformation into a new creation, beautiful things happen. Amazing things happen. Until that time, the dope might be gone, but the lifestyle isn't. And what that translates to is there are going to be a lot of people in early addiction who are still going to be lying to you, who are still going to be BSing people, and that the lifestyle is just as hard to break as the drug, and in many cases, more so, and depending on the substance. I've read a lot of books on this. I really have, from PhDs and MDs and every angle you could think of. If your substance of choice was methamphetamine, that according to everybody, is the drug that has the most difficult lifestyle to get away from, because you get used to staying up for literally days on end. And you start to feel like if you're sleeping, really cool stuff is going on in the world that you're not a part of. Man, I don't want to go to sleep. Sleep is the enemy. And that mindset really starts to sink in. And so does meth psychosis and all kinds of other really bad things. You deprive yourself of sleep for long periods of time and really bad things happen. That's a fact. Your brain needs that. We've talked about this many times. Your brain needs time to work through the things that you can't work through during the day. If any of you have donated $1 today, I apologize. If you guys have donated money in the last few days, I apologize. To be brutally honest, with the new setup that I have, it is damn near impossible to read the comments. It really is. It's almost impossible. My eyes are not what they were. In fact, I'm having some struggles with them. So if I blow them up this big on the screen, honestly, I still can't make out what's being said. And it's so frustrating. You'll watch my eyes dart over here, right, all the time. If I watch it on the replay, I'm going like this to both the screens and I can't see them. And it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. So instead, I just turned them off. And I'm sorry. I really am sorry for that. I know that it's way better when, if I can interact with you, it's way better. If Linda is ever on the boat, if there's something really important that somebody says, she'll text it to me. and then I can blow it up. The letters are this big on my phone. It's not that I'm trying to ignore anybody. The vast majority of you, I would never want to do that to. I just find myself really struggling to make things out, in terms of being able to read. There's it's got a few health issues, and that's one of them. That is one of them. So I said, you got to start rebuilding friends. Can you take back friends from your past? It is possible. And the only person that can answer that is you. If you feel like you're at a stage of your recovery where there is nothing on God's green earth that can threaten your serenity and your sobriety, well, then maybe you'll be able to hang out with somebody that you used to do dope with for a day. I've done it. Jack and I have done mountains of dope together. Years and years spent every day getting wasted. And I spent a lot of time with him after I was sober. We had a lot of good times. He no longer takes my phone calls, which would lead me to believe that he's back in the life. There's never been a time he wouldn't take my phone calls. I do know he's alive. There are ways I can find that out. And he's not incarcerated. But from what I understand, he's not doing opiates. So that's good. And it is what it is. But I would be less likely to hang out with him today, knowing that he's using. Would I be willing to drive down there and get him and bring him here and get him sober? Yeah, I'd be willing to do that. I would probably have to beat the piss out of him to make that happen. And I have beat the piss out of him about 9 times. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Maybe 3 times. I'm exaggerating, but I've slapped him around on numerous occasions and then really regretted it later. I really do care a lot about the guy. But, his best friend runs a sobriety channel. And he couldn't call that dude and put him in his 5. Know what I mean? It's a very difficult thing. This journey that we're going on is a very difficult thing. And if you make friends or you choose new family, there are going to be things you tell this person about your past that you're probably not going to tell anyone else ever. Or maybe about your present. Things going on today that you never would share with anybody else. I'm going to share something with you right now that somebody on the boat shared with me. And I swear to you, I asked this individual, would you have a problem if I talked about this on the lifeboat? And I will tell you something honestly. I don't know that I've ever read this person's name in the chat. If I have, it's been a really, really long time. I mean, like first season, long time. But we correspond regularly. Don't actually hang out, but we correspond. He lives in a different part of the world. But he is going through health troubles that are as bad, if not worse than mine. Really struggling. And since the anonymity in this is bulletproof, he said, tell him whatever you want. I don't know who you're talking about, right? He doesn't interact with you very much. This man, his body is shutting down. And I understand that, right? There are parts of me that are shutting down, but there are parts of him that are shutting down that are getting very, very serious. And one is below the waist. Sexually, this guy's done. And I can't imagine what it took to tell someone that. I really can't. That's such a thing for a guy. So when you pick people for your 5, get to know them a little bit. Get to know them. Because if you've got to tell somebody something like that, can you imagine telling somebody like that, something like that, who turned out not to be a good person? Right? Or worse yet, just turned out. We live in a day and age where someone will treat you nice on Monday and bury something in your back on Tuesday, and they'll do it online, or they'll do it. We can go behind people's backs today in ways we never could. That's why when this guy told me this, I said, this is the greatest illustration ever for what I'm talking about tomorrow. Would you be cool if I talked about it? Where this person lives, he's not seeing this now, but he's going to see it later. And I would never, ever, by pains of death, tell anybody this individual's name. I wouldn't. You could torture me and I wouldn't. Again, if I said it, I don't think any of you would know it, but I wouldn't do that. And I take that shit really seriously. You really need to be careful when you build family and friends going forward. You really do. You got to realize that we're going to be building family and friends out of a pool of people who are very much like us. And I don't mean that in the best of ways. Very often, I mean that in the worst of ways. Somebody that gets through and is successful can truthfully become a brand new creation. People like to argue that with me. F off. I mean, honestly, what's the point of being here if you do not believe that a person can become a new creation? What is the point of listening to me? That's the backbone of my life, is that belief that everybody can become a new creation if they just get drugs out of their life. Sadly, the success rate is low, very low, which means that a lot of times the people that we make friends with and the people that we get to know and the people that you really start to feel like maybe they're family or whatever, well, they got a 70% chance that they're not going to make it. That's about what the success rate is. So if somebody from your 5 does something that really upsets you or goes behind your back, stabs you in the back, takes something, makes up something about you, any of that stuff could be really painful. But what if it's somebody that you really think of as family? Because with the 5, you're going to replace him. You find another person, But if it's one of those individuals that you would be willing to call and say, dude, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to have sex again. If they're the kind of person that you can drop that on, in the day of the internet, can you imagine what it would feel like if that dude betrayed you? I mean, that really is, to me, maybe it's because I'm a guy, but to me, that's the ultimate, that would be the ultimate example. And it's a threat. So you can make some amazing friends in recovery. You can make amazing friends in recovery. But there's a reason that they say relationships, especially in the first couple of years, are the most dangerous things. Well, you got to make friends and you got to have people you can call in the first couple of years. Honestly. Or you got to utilize this kind of situation here and really get it out. When you're in a chat, say to somebody, hey, man, I am really hurting. Can you text me? Get a therapist. There's a lot of things you can do. But the opposite of addiction is connection. So you're going to have people that you can talk to, or you're just not going to be able to get sober and stay sober. I guess what I'm trying to say is be really careful. And I know that that's probably, you say, well, how do you do that? I don't know. If you find somebody that's really similar to you, if I found someone that's really similar to me, that would scare the crap out of me. I'll be really honest. For real. So if I do hang out with people who are users, and the two of us are going to go hang out for 6 or 7 hours, it's probably a good idea if that person's drug of choice wasn't my drug of choice. You follow me? I'm less likely to screw up. Alan Ballantyne is a very close friend of mine. Love Alan. Alan was not addicted to heroin. So as much as our lives ran on kind of parallel tracks, we're very close to the same age. His family situation is very, very similar. His parents are still together. Lived a very, very long life. And there's just a lot of similarities. We really gel in a lot of ways. But this drug was meth, and mine was opiates, which means that our experiences are different enough that it would be very highly unlikely that one of us would tell a story that would get the other one to tell a story that would get, and the next thing you know, you're glorifying it. And you're saying things like, did you like China White or tar better? I think tar. I think I like tar better. And then that leads to, I'm telling you, those kind of questions. When you start to glorify drugs, any part of them, then you're in trouble. Now, if all of this has not turned your head around backwards, because there's a lot to digest, and it's difficult stuff. It really is. It is very, very difficult stuff. Relationships are horrendous to navigate. They really are. So if everything I've just said was not confusing enough, I'm of the firm belief that you can be friends with someone who still uses something other than their drug of choice. I'm not you have to be off every substance on the planet guy. I don't preach that. I have to be off every substance on the planet. That is what I've learned in recovery. You will learn in recovery whether you're that person. I don't think a doctor could tell you, and sure as hell, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. But I'm incapable of doing drugs of any kind. I'll get addicted to them. The only one that I could do is drink, because there's no chance I could get addicted to it. I just don't really enjoy it. It's never been one of those things that I really enjoy. And out of respect to the people on this boat who are trying not to, I just stopped one day. I probably drank for the first 8 months of the boat. And I don't mean I was getting loaded every day. I mean, every couple of weeks I might have 3 or 4 beers. And then I just decided, you know what? It's pretty disrespectful. It really is. To sit in this chair and do that. And it doesn't mean that much to me. You know what I mean? I wasn't giving up much. Still addicted to nicotine. And I'll be honest with you. In the delivery method that I get it in now, I'm not really tripped out about it. I'm not burning, leaves and inhaling the crap into my body, which is probably a step up from where I have been. But I don't preach a complete abstinence doctrine to too many people. I preach it to myself. And I also believe wholeheartedly that there are a crapload of people on this planet that can't ever do another drug. Ever. It's just the way it is. There are drugs that you absolutely cannot get addicted to. I mean, there are some drugs out there that would just be literally impossible to become addicted to because of the nature of how the drug works. You know what I mean? You got to do LSD 365 days in a row. By day 20, you would be eating 6 sheets of acid to try to get any kind of a feeling. The way that stuff works in your body is bizarre. And if you take it on a Monday and then you take the same dose on Tuesday, you really got to double the dose on Tuesday, maybe even 2.5 times on Tuesday. And I've gone to dead shows where I tripped for 4 or 5 days in a row, 6 days in a row. And the amount of stuff you're taking at the end is just insane. You're taking 35, 40 hits trying to get it. So it's not a drug you could really become addicted to and become a daily user of. It would be hard. And most of the really heavy psychedelics seem to be drugs that very few people really go off the rails. They're out there. There are people out there that the danger in those drugs, as far as I'm concerned, is that there are people whose brains just weren't built for it. There was a guy in my hometown. I probably have still told this story before, but there was a guy in my hometown named Dave, and Dave walked around and wore a jean jacket and blue jeans, and he would go to the village green where the road going into the town split. So it's a one-way street all of a sudden. Splits like this, right? So traffic's going this way and it's going this way, right? So, and in the middle between the two roads is about 6 or 7 acres of grass, trees. And Dave would be out there every single day playing hacky sack with the high school kids. Dave was about 46. And one of his favorite expressions was, "It's insane," which he would say about 600 times a day. It's insane. It's insane. And the story goes that he did 3 hits of acid at a ZZ Top concert. And that was it. Dave really never really completely came down. It's not funny. It's tragic. But I look back on it through the lens of a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old. It's difficult for me. You know, Dave couldn't drive. I said to him, you know, because he seems very physically fit. He said, yeah, you know, I still see things. He's like, driving would be tough. I still see things. And it's, yeah, the vast majority of people, that's not going to happen to. And there was really a smear campaign in the 50s. There was a lot of research being done with LSD, psilocybin, things like that in the 50s, showing some really promising results for, believe it or not, treating drug addiction, treating PTSD, treating a whole myriad of brain disorders. And then they wanted it gone because it seemed like it was also becoming a very big part of the counterculture, you know, and those 3-letter agencies were not too stoked that it was starting to get a lot of people to protest what was going on in Southeast Asia and all of that. And all of a sudden they made it illegal. Like, I'm not sure if you guys, you know, were aware, but LSD was completely legal. You could possess it, you could use it. There was no issue until there was. And sadly, I mean, what made that tough was that the research stopped on all of that stuff. And there was a no-lie BS campaign put out. A very famous guy, and if you're old enough, you probably will know who I'm talking about. But a very famous person lost a daughter. And he told the world that she stepped out of a window on LSD. And that story was perpetuated for years, and it got multiplied. Other people said it. Other famous people said the same thing. You know, my kid stepped off of the 40th floor, thought the ground was right there. And believe it, that can happen. I had a friend who is in a wheelchair from falling out of a window on acid, but he was at a party at a hotel, and the party kind of went around the corner, and he knew how high he was. He just thought that he could, on that ledge, go from here to there, and he didn't make it. He's alive, but he's pretty jacked up. But yeah, there was a smear campaign to do away with all that. But that's just a deep rabbit run as I squirrel off in the wrong direction on, I think that there are drugs out there that people can do and probably do recreationally that not only will not lead them back into active addiction, but stand a decent chance of pushing them away from addiction to anything else. I believe that. You don't have to. You don't have to. But I wouldn't make anybody a person I would call if I was in trouble. If that individual was experimenting with other drugs to see if they could still get high and not do their drug of choice. That said, if the individual has been off their substance of choice for 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, but smokes grass every day or smokes grass 3 times a week or whatever, that person probably has a pretty good handle on the sobriety thing. And weed probably is a non-issue for that person. That's my opinion. My opinions don't jive with a great deal of what the world believes. But that's what I believe. And you can take it or leave it. the biggest recommendation, if you take anything away from today's show, write a goodbye letter to your drug of choice. Give it human characteristics. It's hard to get pissed off at a white powder, but you treat that white powder as if it was alive, and think of all the things that crap did to you. I started looking at heroin like it was a woman, and I started to realize what this woman had cost me. Veins, for real. At that point, I had to be taken to a hospital, and you had to use an ultrasound machine to be able to find a vein to take blood. No lie. I'd be in prison, and they would need to do a blood draw. Over a certain age, you have to get blood drawn and tests done once a year. And I would have to leave the facility once a year because they could not even draw blood from me at the prison. Pretty jacked up. And a lot of the problems that I'm having now are related to that stuff. And I don't mean that opiates have caused my body to be this jacked up or my brain to be this jacked up, because they didn't. But the things that I did on them, the decisions that I made while using that crap on a daily basis has definitely led to some brain damage and some other problems that when they used to say things like, you're not going to be able to walk when you're 50 or when you're 40, that just sounds funny as hell when you're 18. Because 40, honestly, I remember thinking, that's going to be in the next century. I'm never going to hit 40. But we don't have a lot of 18-year-olds on the lifeboat. But if anyone ever hears this, 40 is about 45 minutes away. You don't think so, but I'm telling you, it'll be there in a couple of days. It's bizarre. All right, everybody. I apologize. Again, if anybody on the boat donated anything today, I thank you. If anybody didn't, I still thank you. And try to make today a great day. I am going to work on solutions that I hope will be able to blow up the chat to a size that I could read. Or, I should say, or I'm also going to get a different lens in the glasses. Apparently, those glasses wear out. Who knew? You know what I mean? Like, they work for a year or two, and then they just don't work anymore. I think maybe they wear out, and then you got to replace them with a stronger pair. Kind of how it goes. Alrighty, peeps. I'm Tommy. This is the Lifeboat. I'll be back at 5 o'clock tonight. The cat is hunting. Make it a great day, people. I'm going to try.